The alien headquarters fell silent when the Queen's daughter broke protocol, ran past armed guards, and hugged me in front of the entire court. In that moment, I realized humanity had already won a battle no weapon could ever fight. Subscribe for HFY stories where compassion becomes the most feared power in the galaxy. The alien headquarters was designed to intimidate. Every surface gleamed with controlled perfection. Towering crystalline columns, living walls that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent patterns, and a ceiling so high it dissolved into shadow. The air itself felt regulated, filtered through unseen systems meant to remind visitors that nothing here existed by accident, including me that I stood alone at the center of the chamber, boots planted on polished stone that reflected my outline back at me like an accusation. Around the perimeter, alien officials watched in complete stillness. No whispers. No unnecessary movement. Every member of the Queen's court had been trained to observe without reacting. They were very good at at the far end of the chamber, elevated above all others, sat the alien queen. Her form was tall and elegant, armored in ceremonial plates grown rather than forged. Her gaze was ancient, analytical, and utterly unreadable. This was not a ruler who relied on emotion. This was a ruler who survived by never allowing it to surface. This meeting was supposed to be procedural, that a human envoy, sent to finalize trade accords and military access rights. No speeches. No drama. Signatures, acknowledgments, and dismissal. Humanity was tolerated here, not respected, but no longer ignored. That alone had taken decades. That I had been chosen because I was forgettable. That was the logic anyway, that I wasn't a general. I wasn't a diplomat by birth. I was a logistics officer who had coordinated humanitarian corridors during border collapses and refugee evacuations. My record showed efficiency, neutrality, and compliance. Someone safe enough to stand in front of an alien monarch without making history. That plan lasted exactly 12 seconds. The Queen's daughter stood beside the throne, half a step behind and to the right. Small by her species standards. Young enough that her ceremonial mantle hadn't yet been reinforced with authority markings. Her eyes, large, luminous, and far too curious, had never left me since I entered the chamber. I noticed. Everyone noticed, but no one reacted. Alien courts did not react to anything without permission. The Queen spoke first, her voice resonating through the chamber without amplification. Human representative, you may state your purpose. I inclined my head. I am here on behalf of the United Terran Coalition to formalize the relief corridor agreements. And movement, soft. Sudden. Completely wrong. The princess stepped forward, not ceremonially. Not with permission. She stepped forward the way children do, without calculating consequence, that a ripple of tension passed through the guards, barely perceptible but immediate. Hands hovered near weapons. Eyes flicked toward the Queen, waiting for correction that it didn't come. The princess broke into a run. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Actual sound, uncontrolled and sharp. Protocol shattered in real time as the Queen's daughter crossed the sacred distance between throne and envoy, ceremonial mantle trailing behind her, that I barely had time to register what was happening before she reached me. Then she threw her arms around my torso and pressed her face against my chest. The entire headquarters froze. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. Every system designed to respond to threat hesitated. Guards locked mid-motion. Advisors stopped breathing. Even the living walls dimmed slightly, as if the structure itself sensed something unprecedented had occurred. The princess held me tightly, her grip trembling. "You came back," she said softly. The translator in my implant lagged for half a second, long enough for panic to bloom in my chest. I had never met her, least not like this. Murmurs erupted, sharp and fearful. "Remove the human. Protect the air. This violates all security protocols." I didn't move. Years of disaster response had taught me something crucial. When a frightened child grabs you, you don't make sudden movements. You don't raise your voice. You don't treat the moment like a problem to be solved. You let it happen. I lowered my hands slowly, deliberately, resting them where the court could see. Open palms, no threat. The princess clung tighter, her breathing uneven. "I remember you," she whispered. Memory flickered. Our refugee station. Months ago. A collapsing border world. Medical tents overflowing. A young alien child separated from her escort during an evacuation surge. I had carried her through smoke and noise, handed her to a royal guard without ever knowing who she was. Tiomi. She had been just another frightened child. This court. She was everything. The queen rose from her throne, the sound of it, ceremonial armor shifting, ancient authority standing, sent a shock through the chamber. Guards raised weapons halfway before stopping themselves, caught between duty and disbelief. The queen descended the steps slowly. Each step was measured, controlled. Her gaze never left me. "Daughter," the queen said, her voice calm but edged with something dangerously close to emotion. "Explain yourself." The princess pulled back just enough to look up at me, then turned toward her mother without letting go. "He helped me when no one knew who I was," she said. "He did not ask. He did not bow. He just stayed." The silence that followed was absolute. Every assumption this court held about humans, self-interest, opportunism, weakness, fractured quietly. The queen stopped 3 paces away. "You recognize this human?" she asked. "Yes," the princess said without hesitation. The queen's eyes shifted to me. "And you did not know her identity?" "No," I said honestly. She needed help. Something dangerous flickered across the queen's expression. Not anger, to calculation. Did I end one unscripted moment? The balance of power in the room had changed. Not through force. Not through negotiation. Through trust freely given, without expectation. The princess tightened her grip again, as if sensing the tension. "I want him to stay," she said. Every advisor in the chamber reacted at once. Voices overlapping, fear bleeding into outrage. The queen raised one hand. Silence returned. Her gaze locked onto mine, ancient and assessing. "You will remain," she said slowly. "And you will explain to this court why my daughter believes a human is safer than her own guards." I swallowed. This meeting was no longer procedural. This was a test. And I had just become the most dangerous person in the room, not because of who I was, but because of who a child trusted me to be. The queen did not return to her throne. That alone unsettled the chamber more than raised weapons ever could. She remained standing, 3 measured steps from me, close enough that I could see fine fractures in her ceremonial plating, marks of age, not damage. Her authority radiated outward not as volume, but gravity. The court leaned toward her unconsciously, caught in the pull of a ruler who had never needed to repeat herself. The princess still clung to my chest. Her grip was no longer desperate, but deliberate. She stayed because she chose to, not because she was afraid to let go. That distinction mattered. Children released fear quickly. Trust lingered. "You will set the child down," an advisor said sharply, unable to contain himself. The queen's gaze cut sideways. The advisor fell silent mid-breath that I did nothing. Slowly, carefully, I shifted my weight and lowered myself to one knee, bringing myself closer to the princess's height. The movement was unthreatening, controlled, and instinctive. The same posture I'd used 100 times in medical tents and evacuation corridors. The princess loosened her grip, but did not step away. "You remember me," I said softly, keeping my voice low enough that only she and the queen could hear. "From the station." She nodded. "You smelled like smoke." And calm. A ripple of murmurs passed through the court. Alien olfactory memory was acute. Emotional association even more so. I glanced up at the queen. There was an evacuation surge. Your security teams were overwhelmed. The queen inclined her head slightly. We lost contact with the princess for 6.4 minutes. I winced. It felt longer. "That is not an answer," an elder matron snapped. "It is the truth," the queen replied without looking at her. The princess turned fully now, facing her mother. "He did not tell me to be quiet. He did not rush me. He carried me until I stopped shaking." The words landed like a fracture in crystal. Security doctrine was built on containment, control, and speed. Compassion was not an approved tactic. "Human," the queen said, her voice level. "You did not seek favor or recognition." "No," I replied. "I was trying to keep people alive." "And when you realized who she was?" "I never did," I said. "Until now." That, more than anything else, changed the room. The queen studied me in silence, eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion, but in re-evaluation. To her people, status was visible, encoded in clothing, posture, pheromones, and rank. The idea that a human could move through a royal crisis without perceiving hierarchy was unsettling. Or enlightening. You treated my daughter as an equal, the queen said slowly. I treated her as a child, I corrected. Those are not the same thing. Another ripple. Deeper this time. The queen turned to the assembled court. Our doctrines teach that humans are transactional, that they act only when advantage is present. Her gaze returned to me. Explain this behavior. I considered my words carefully. Not for politics, but for accuracy. When things fall apart, I said, we don't have time to ask who someone is supposed to be. Only who they are right now. Silence. The princess reached up and took my hand. Not tightly. Not desperately. Openly. The court inhaled as one. That gesture, an advisor hissed, binds him symbolically to the royal line. The queen raised her hand again. You are mistaken, she said. It binds nothing. It reveals. She knelt. That was the moment the headquarters truly froze. A ruling monarch of the Aurelian Empire did not kneel. Not to soldiers. Not to allies. Not even to her own people. Yet here she was, lowering herself until her eyes were level with mine and her daughter's. Human, she said quietly, you will answer me honestly. Yes, your majesty. If my daughter had not been who she is, would you have done anything differently? No, I said without hesitation. The princess squeezed my fingers, satisfied. The queen held my gaze for a long time. Then she rose smoothly, turning back toward the throne. This court will adjourn for one cycle, she announced. All external observers are dismissed. Chaos nearly erupted. This is unprecedented. Silence, the queen said. The chamber emptied in stunned fragments, guards and officials retreating with rigid precision, none daring to ask questions aloud. When the doors finally sealed, only 4 of us remained. The queen, the princess, 2 elite guards at a respectful distance, and me. You understand the danger you are in, the queen said. Yes, I replied. You understand the danger my daughter has placed herself in. Yes. The princess looked up at her mother. I trust him. I know, the queen said softly. That is what terrifies them. She turned to me again. Trust is a weapon in this court. It is also a liability. I've learned that, I said. You have been placed in an impossible position, she continued. You cannot be dismissed. You cannot be elevated. Either would signal weakness. Then what happens? I asked. Her eyes glinted. You will stay, under my observation. The princess brightened. He will. Yes, the queen said. Because if humans truly are what you claim. She met my gaze. Then this empire must learn what we have been misjudging. The princess leaned against me, satisfied, already bored with politics. I felt the weight settle fully now, not fear, not pride. Responsibility. A child had trusted me without knowing my name. An empire was about to learn what that meant. And whatever happened next, it would not be decided by fleets or treaties, but by whether humanity could survive being seen clearly for the first time. They moved me to a chamber that was not a cell. That distinction mattered more than the room itself. The space was circular, open to the city beyond through a living crystal wall that refracted light into slow, drifting colors. No restraints, no guards inside. Only a soft, constant hum. Security systems present but discreet, like a reminder rather than a threat. You are not imprisoned, the queen had said. You are contained. Empires loved precise language. I stood near the wall, watching traffic flow far below. Alien vessels glided between towers grown rather than built, their movements elegant and disciplined. Everything here followed order. Everything had a place. And now, apparently, so did I. The door opened without sound. The princess entered alone. No guards. No attendants. Just her, smaller than she'd seemed in the court, mantle replaced by a simple garment that marked her as a child rather than an heir. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw me. You are still here, she said. So are you, I replied. She nodded seriously, then crossed the room and sat on the floor near the wall, legs folded beneath her in a posture that felt intentionally informal. I followed her lead, lowering myself to sit a short distance away. "My mother says you are dangerous," she said matter-of-factly. I blinked. "That's new. She does not mean violent," the princess clarified. "She means disruptive." That earned a smile. "I've been called worse." She studied me for a moment, then asked, "Why did you stay with me on the station?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was curious, honest, unshielded by politics. "There were a lot of scared people," I said. "You were one of them." She tilted her head. "Others were also scared. You did not stay with all of them." "No," I admitted. "I stayed with the ones I could reach." She considered that. "That sounds inefficient." "Probably," I agreed. "But it worked." She was quiet after that, gaze drifting to the city beyond the crystal wall. "Our doctrine says efficiency is survival." I followed her gaze. "Ours says survival isn't enough." She turned back to me slowly. "Then what is the point?" The question struck deeper than I expected. "To make sure what survives is worth saving," I said. She absorbed that without comment, then rose smoothly to her feet. "My mother will want to speak with you again." I figured. "She is uncertain," the princess added. "That makes others afraid." The door opened again, this time with intention. The queen entered, posture composed, expression unreadable. 2 guards took positions at the threshold, but did not cross it. "Daughter," the queen said gently, "you should return to your studies." The princess glanced at me, then back to her mother. "You will not harm him." The queen held her gaze. "No." Satisfied, the princess nodded and exited without ceremony. The queen watched her go for a long moment before turning to me. "You have destabilized this court," she said. "I didn't mean to," I replied. "That is rarely how destabilization occurs," she said. "It arrives quietly, under the guise of something harmless." She moved closer to the wall, standing beside me, looking out over her city. "Our advisors are divided, I imagine. Some see you as a liability," she continued. "Others see you as leverage, a symbol." I winced. "I'd rather not be either." She regarded me sidelong. "Humans often misunderstand how power works." "I've noticed." "Power," she said, "is the ability to define what matters." She turned to face me fully. "Until today, humans did not matter here." The words weren't cruel. They were factual. "And now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "my daughter has made you matter." The room felt heavier for it. "Your presence forces a question we have long avoided," the queen continued. "Are humans a variable we can control, or one we must understand?" "I'd recommend the second option," I said. A flicker of something like amusement crossed her eyes. "Of course you would." She paced slowly, hands clasped behind her back. "Your people are strange. You lack cohesion. Your politics are fractured. Your military doctrines contradict themselves." "All true," I said. "And yet," she continued, "you respond to chaos with initiative, individual action, improvisation." "We're bad at waiting," I said. "Yes," she agreed. "And that frightens empires." She stopped in front of me. "I will test you." I met her gaze. "How?" "You will remain here," she said. "Not as a prisoner, not as an envoy, but as an observer." "Of what?" "Of us," she replied. "And we will observe you." I nodded slowly. "And if your court decides they don't like what they see?" The queen's expression hardened. "Then they will learn something valuable." "Which is?" "That removing you would be more dangerous than keeping you." The implication was clear. My safety now rested not on goodwill, but on precedent. The queen turned away, signaling the end of the conversation. At the door, she paused. "You did not bow to me today," she said. "No," I replied. "You did not seek advantage." "No." "And yet," she said quietly, "you have gained more influence than most diplomats achieve in a lifetime." I met her eyes. "That wasn't my goal." "I know," she said. "That is why it worked." When she left, the chamber fell quiet again. I sat by the crystal wall long after, watching the alien city glow and shift. Somewhere within it, advisors argued. Doctrines were re-examined. Old assumptions cracked under the weight of a simple truth. A child had trusted a human. And an empire was beginning to realize that humanity's greatest threat was not its weapons, but its tendency to treat individuals as individuals, even when the universe insisted they were something else. Whatever test the Queen had planned, one thing was already certain. This headquarters would never be the same, because it had learned how silence sounded, right before everything changed. The test did not begin with alarms. That alone made it dangerous. I noticed a change in the air first, a subtle shift in pressure, the kind you feel before a storm but can't quite explain. The chamber's ambient light adjusted by a fraction, crystals along the walls dimming into a cooler spectrum. Not defensive, not hostile, intentional. 2 guards appeared at the threshold, their posture formal but tense. They did not enter. "The Queen summons you," one said. "No honorific, no accusation, just fact." I rose and followed them through corridors that twisted deeper into the heart of the headquarters. We passed areas I hadn't seen before, strategic galleries displaying living maps of contested systems, chambers where advisors debated in hushed, precise tones, halls where history was recorded not in words, but in shifting light and memory. This was not a walk meant to impress. It was meant to orient Maine. We entered a chamber smaller than the throne hall, but heavier with consequence. A circular table dominated the center, its surface alive with projections. Around it stood 12 figures, senior advisors, military strategists, cultural archivists. All eyes turned to me as I entered. The Queen stood at the far end, hands resting lightly on the table. "You will stand here," she said, indicating an open space opposite her. I did. "This court has debated your presence," she continued. "We are divided. Some see risk. Others see opportunity." She gestured, and the projections shifted. A border world appeared, scarred, unstable, flickering with warning markers. Civilian populations clustered in red zones. Supply lines fractured. Patrol routes stretched thin. "A humanitarian collapse," I said quietly. "Yes," the Queen replied. "And a political one." An advisor stepped forward. "The world lies between 3 powers. Intervention risks escalation. Non-intervention guarantees casualties," another countered. The Queen raised a hand. "Human," she said. "This is your test." I looked at her. "You want my recommendation?" "No," she corrected. "We want your instinct." The projections expanded, feeding me real-time data, population density, threat vectors, resource scarcity. Enough information to paralyze a committee. Enough uncertainty to force a choice. "This is not a simulation," the Queen said. "Whatever course is chosen will be enacted." The room went still. Every instinct drilled into me screamed for caution, for disclaimers, for shared responsibility. Instead, I focused on the red zones. "How long until total infrastructure failure?" I asked. A strategist answered automatically. 6 cycles. "And evacuation capacity?" "Insufficient," another replied. "Priority vessels can extract leadership and key personnel." I felt my jaw tighten. "What about everyone else?" Silence. I looked back at the Queen. "You want to know how humans decide?" "Yes." "Then don't give me options built around authority," I said. "Give me constraints." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Very well. Can we send aid without declaring control?" I asked. "Yes." "Can we deploy mixed-species teams?" "Yes, but can we ignore borders long enough to move civilians?" I pressed. The Queen held up a hand. "Continue." I inhaled slowly. "Then we send help. Now. We don't wait for consensus. We don't argue jurisdiction. We stabilize what we can, where we can, with whoever will stand next to us." A murmur rippled through the advisors. "That violates protocol," one said sharply. "It violates precedent," another added. "Yes," I replied. "It saves lives." The Queen watched me closely. "And if another power responds with force? Then they'll have to explain why they fired on relief ships," I said. "Humans do that sometimes. It's not pretty, but it changes the conversation." The military advisors stiffened. Cultural archivists exchanged uneasy glances. "You would risk conflict," one said. "I'd risk criticism," I corrected. Conflict already exists. You're just choosing whether to acknowledge it. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Why? She asked at last. Why choose this path? I didn't need to think. Because if you ask who deserves help first, you've already decided some people don't. The words hung in the chamber like a fault line. The Queen turned to the advisors. You see, some look shaken, others thoughtful, a few angry. This is what we do not teach, she continued. The human does not optimize for empire. He optimizes for outcome. She faced me again. You have failed our doctrine. I nodded. I figured. And passed the test, she finished. The advisors reacted instantly, voices overlapping, objections forming, but the Queen silenced them with a gesture. We will deploy relief fleets, she said, under joint banners. No claims. No expansion. She looked at me. You will accompany the mission. That surprised me. As what? She considered. As yourself. The room absorbed that. Later, as I walked back through the corridors, the princess appeared at my side as if she'd been waiting for me. You chose the loud path, she said. I chose the fast one, I replied. She smiled faintly. My tutors will not like it. They rarely do, I said. She stopped walking and looked up at me. You do not belong here. No, I agreed. But you are needed, she said. That night, as fleets began to move and messages rippled outward across political boundaries, the alien headquarters buzzed with something unfamiliar. Not fear. Momentum. For the first time in generations, the Empire was not asking what it was allowed to do. It was asking what needed to be done. And it had taken one human, unranked, unarmed, unimportant on paper, to remind them how dangerous that question could be. The fleet launched without ceremony. No anthem. No proclamation. Just motion. From the observation deck, I watched the first relief vessels detach from the headquarters superstructure and slide into open space. They were not warships, though they carried defensive arrays. They were carriers, hospitals, fabrication platforms, tools meant to build and repair rather than conquer. That distinction unsettled people. Empires were comfortable with force. Aid made them nervous. The Queen stood beside me, hands folded behind her back, eyes following the departing ships. This action will be interpreted as weakness by some, she said. Yes, I replied. And as leadership by others. She considered that. You humans accept that contradiction easily. We don't, I said. We just live with it. Behind us, advisors spoke in tense, clipped tones. Projections updated constantly. Responses from neighboring powers, diplomatic channels lighting up. Threat assessments recalculating in real time. The decision to deploy without negotiation had sent shockwaves through established norms. One advisor approached, barely concealing agitation. Border militias are mobilizing. They interpret this as encroachment. Are they firing? The Queen asked. Not yet. Then continue, she said. The advisor hesitated, then turned to me. Your influence has accelerated this beyond prediction. I met his gaze. People tend to move faster when lives are on the line. He frowned. That is not a stable governing principle. No, I said. It's a human one. The first distress feeds arrived within the hour. Cities darkened by failing grids. Medical wards overflowing. Families packed into transit tunnels, waiting for ships that had never been approved to arrive. Until now. The relief fleet didn't wait for formal docking clearance. They synchronized with local infrastructure, deployed emergency reactors, and opened corridors through debris-choked space lanes. Mixed species crews moved together with practiced urgency, translating on the fly, adapting procedures when protocols didn't match. It was messy. It worked. I stood in the coordination hub as reports streamed in. Aurelian officers watched the data with expressions ranging from disbelief to reluctant admiration. They are improvising, one strategist said, disapproving. They are responding, I replied. A feed flared red, border militia vessels approaching a relief convoy. Weapons charging. The room tensed. Do we withdraw? An advisor asked. No, the Queen said calmly. The screen split. On one side, militia ships. On the other, relief transports holding course, shields raised but weapons cold. A human voice cut through the channel, steady and unadorned. We're carrying civilians. Fire if you're willing to explain it. The militia hesitated. Then they powered down. Aurelian officers stared at the display. They yielded, someone whispered. They were given a choice, I said. Hours later, the princess joined me in the hub, watching medics evacuate civilians from a collapsing district. They listen to you, she said. They listen to outcomes, I replied. She studied the feeds intently. My people have always believed control ensures safety. I glanced at the screen, where a mixed crew worked side by side, ignoring rank markings as they stabilized a failing reactor. Control ensures predictability, I said. Safety comes from trust. She thought about that. Trust is fragile. Yes, I agreed. That's why it matters. By the end of the cycle, casualties had dropped sharply. Infrastructure stabilized. The worst of the collapse had been averted, not by domination, but by speed, coordination, and a willingness to act without waiting for permission. The advisors reconvened, subdued now. This operation will alter interstellar expectations, one said. The Queen nodded. It already has. She turned to me. You understand what you have done. I do, I said. You have shown that our empire can act without asserting ownership, she continued. That assistance does not require submission. That idea scares people, I said. Yes, she replied. Including me. She paused, then added, and yet it feels correct. The princess smiled faintly. Later, alone in the quiet corridor outside the hub, I felt the weight finally settle. Not triumph. Not relief. Responsibility. A child's trust had opened a door. Walking through it had forced an empire to confront itself. The fleet continued its work, and the galaxy took notice. Messages arrived, some grateful, some hostile, all paying attention. Doctrine had met reality. Reality had not blinked. And for the first time, the Aurelian Empire understood something humans had learned the hard way long ago. That the most dangerous thing you can do in a broken universe is choose to help without asking who will benefit. The backlash didn't come from the borders. It came from inside. I felt it first in the way conversations stopped when I entered a room. Advisors, who had once challenged me, openly now measured every word. Military officers no longer dismissed my presence, but they didn't welcome it either. I had crossed an invisible threshold. No longer irrelevant, not yet trusted. Seen. Empires tolerated invisibility. Visibility was dangerous. The Queen summoned the High Council 3 cycles after the relief fleets launched. This time, the chamber was full, no observers dismissed, no doors sealed. Representatives from allied powers attended via projection, their images hovering at the edges like judgment made visible. The princess sat beside her mother, posture perfect, expression unreadable. She didn't look at me when I entered. That worried me more than hostility would have. The Queen spoke without preamble. The humanitarian deployment succeeded. A few advisors nodded. Others remained rigid. However, she continued, 3 allied powers have issued formal protest. 2 border coalitions have begun military exercises within striking distance of our routes. And 1 internal faction has invoked the doctrine of containment. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Containment doctrine meant isolation, retrenchment, the quiet withdrawal of influence in exchange for stability. I exhaled slowly. An advisor turned toward me. This outcome was foreseeable. Yes, I said. And so was the alternative. Your presence accelerated conflict vectors, another snapped. You turned a relief mission into a precedent. I turned inaction into action, I replied. The precedent was already there. You just hadn't touched it. The Queen raised her hand. Enough. She turned to me. Human. You must understand. Your approach carries cost. I do, I said. No, she corrected gently. You understand the cost to others. You have not yet felt the cost to yourself. The princess finally looked at me. Her eyes were troubled. The Queen gestured, and the chamber's projection shifted. A familiar symbol filled the air, Terran coalition markings. diplomatic channels, security briefings. They are responding to your influence, the Queen said. Your people are concerned. I stiffened. They fear you are becoming something they cannot control, an advisor added. A bitter smile tugged at my mouth. That makes two empires. The Queen didn't smile. They have requested your immediate return. Publicly, privately, they have issued warnings. The words settled heavily. You are now a liability, she continued. To them. To us. The chamber waited for my reaction. I thought of the princess running across the throne room, of relief ships ignoring borders, of lives saved because someone chose speed over certainty. I won't apologize, I said quietly. I did not ask you to, the Queen replied. She rose slowly. This council must decide whether your presence strengthens or destabilizes our empire. An elder advisor stepped forward. The human represents a disruptive ideology. Compassion without hierarchy. Action without sanction. Yes, the Queen said. He does. And such ideology spreads, the advisor continued. Already, junior officers question protocol. Civilian sectors petition for similar interventions. That is how change works, I said. That is how control is lost, the advisor countered. The princess stood. Every voice died instantly. She turned toward the council, then toward her mother. Her voice was steady, but young enough that honesty hadn't learned fear yet. You taught me that leadership is not comfort, she said. It is responsibility. The Queen inclined her head slightly. You taught me that power exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves, the princess continued. This human did that when he had none. The chamber held its breath. If that makes him dangerous, she said, then perhaps we should ask why. Silence stretched, thick and brittle. The Queen looked at her daughter for a long moment. Something unspoken passed between them. History, love, fear. Then the Queen turned back to the council. The human will remain, she said, but not as an observer. The advisors reacted immediately, voices rising, but the Queen spoke over them. He will be designated a liaison, she continued. Without rank, without command, with access. That was worse than authority. That was influence. You will walk between systems, the Queen said to me. You will explain us to humans, and humans to us. You will absorb blame when things fracture. I nodded slowly. And if they try to remove me? Her eyes sharpened. Then they will reveal their priorities. After the council adjourned, the princess found me in the quiet corridor beyond the chamber. The lights there were dimmer, softer, less ceremonial. You are tired, she said. Yes, I replied. You could have left, she added. When they asked, I thought about it. Why didn't you? I considered the question carefully. Because if I leave now, everything we started becomes a story instead of a standard. She nodded. Stories fade. Standards don't, I said. She walked beside me in silence for a time. Then, softly, they will test you again. I know. And they will hurt you if they can, she said. Not physically. I know that too. She stopped and faced me. Do you regret being seen? The question struck harder than any accusation. I thought of my quiet life before this. Of being invisible, safe, uncomplicated. Then I thought of a child who ran without thinking. Of relief ships that didn't wait. Of empires forced to look at themselves. No, I said. I regret that it took this long. She smiled, not like a princess, but like a child who believed something important had been confirmed. As I walked away, the headquarters hummed with new tension. Doctrines bent. Alliances strained. Expectations shifted. Being seen had a cost. But invisibility had always cost more. And somewhere between two empires, humanity was being redefined, not by its fleets or its demands, but by its refusal to look away once it understood what was at stake. The crisis did not announce itself. It arrived the way all real disasters did, quietly, buried in routine reports and filtered data, disguised as something manageable. A trade disruption here. A communications delay there. Nothing that triggered alarms. Nothing that justified fleets. Until it did. I was in transit between liaison chambers when the corridor lights shifted to emergency amber. Not flashing. Steady. The kind of alert reserved for situations leadership didn't yet want to name. A junior officer approached me at a near run, composure fraying at the edges. You are required in the Central Command Nexus. Immediately. Why? I asked. He swallowed. Because everyone else is afraid to say first. That answer told me enough. The command nexus was chaos contained by discipline. Projections overlapped in layered transparency, fleet movements, trade routes collapsing, border systems blinking from green to red in rapid succession. At the center hovered a single expanding pattern. Coordinated disruptions across 3 neutral systems. Not random. Not accidental. The Queen stood at the Nexus core, unmoving, eyes locked on the display. Advisors spoke in urgent bursts around her, but she didn't respond to any of them. The syndicates are coordinating, a strategist said. Slaver coalitions, mercantile predators, black market fleets. They're leveraging our relief precedent. They're punishing it, another corrected. I stepped closer. They're forcing a choice. The Queen turned her gaze to me. Explain. They're targeting systems we just stabilized, I said. They know you won't abandon them now. And they're betting you won't escalate openly. An advisor scoffed. You suggest we retreat? No, I said. I suggest they are waiting to see if compassion has limits. The room fell silent. The princess stood near the edge of the nexus, hands clenched at her sides, watching the projections with fierce concentration. She didn't look at me, but she listened. They want us to choose between precedent and safety, the Queen said slowly. Yes, I replied. And they think empires always choose safety. One of the military commanders spoke sharply. If we deploy fleets, they will claim aggression. If we don't, I said, they'll dismantle everything we just proved mattered. The Queen considered this. What would humans do? I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, we'd show up anyway. The advisors erupted. That invites war. That signals weakness. That abandons deterrence. No, I said calmly. It reframes it. The Queen raised her hand, silencing them. You propose presence without domination, she said. Again. Yes. And if they fire? Then they reveal themselves, I said. And the galaxy decides who's responsible. The Queen turned back to the projections. The princess stepped forward suddenly, voice cutting through the tension. They are testing whether we mean what we said, she said. About protection. The Queen looked at her daughter. They hurt places we helped, the princess continued. Because they think help is temporary. She met her mother's eyes. If we leave now, they will be right. The Queen closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her decision was already made. Deploy, she said. The word echoed. Not war fleets, she continued. Escort groups. Civilian defense formations. Human coordination. All eyes turned to me. You will lead the joint response, the Queen said. A stunned silence followed. Not as commander, she added. As guarantor. The weight of it hit all at once. I don't have authority, I said. You have credibility, she replied. That is rarer. The princess looked at me then, eyes bright and unafraid. You will come back. Yes, I said. I will. The deployment was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human vessels flew alongside alien defense platforms without shared command chains. No single banner. No territorial claims. Relief convoys moved under constant escort, broadcasting open channels. Everything visible, everything recorded. When syndicate ships approached, they found themselves surrounded by witnesses. The first shots never came. Not because no one was willing, but because no one wanted to be the one history blamed. Trade routes reopened. Attack stalled. The coordinated pressure fractured under scrutiny and consequence. Across neutral space, something shifted. Empires watched. Smaller civilizations took notes. The idea spread, not through treaties, but observation, that protection did not require ownership, and strength did not require silence. Back at headquarters, I stood beside the Queen and the princess as the crisis unwound. They stepped back, an advisor said quietly. Yes, the queen replied. They did. She turned to me. You have changed the equation. I didn't, I said. I just made it visible. The princess smiled. That is how truth usually works. The queen regarded me for a long moment. When you arrived, you were tolerated. Then you were observed. Then tested. And now? I asked. And now, she said, you are precedent. The words settled heavily. The headquarters hummed with a new awareness, not triumph, but realization. The galaxy had held its breath, waiting to see if compassion would fold under pressure. It hadn't. And in that moment, something fundamental changed. Not alliances, not borders, expectations. Because when the queen's daughter had run and hugged a human, the headquarters froze. But now, the galaxy was the one standing still, watching carefully, as humanity proved it would not step back once it stepped forward. The silence that followed the crisis was different from the silence that came before it. Before, it had been rigid, enforced by doctrine, rank, and fear of deviation. Now it was reflective, heavy with recalculation. The alien headquarters still gleamed with the same controlled perfection, but something intangible had shifted within its walls. Certainty was gone. I stood alone at the edge of the central terrace, looking out over the capital city as ships returned to their prescribed lanes. Trade resumed. Communications stabilized. No victory announcements followed. No parades. Empires rarely celebrated restraint. Behind me, footsteps approached, unhurried, familiar. The queen joined me, her presence as commanding as ever, yet quieter now. Not diminished. Refined. The syndicates have withdrawn beyond monitored space, she said. Not in defeat. In reconsideration. That's usually the first step, I replied. Yes, she said. It is also the most dangerous. We watch traffic move below in disciplined streams of light. You understand, she continued, that what occurred cannot be undone. I do, I said. You have altered how others will approach us, she said. They will test our resolve. They will look for cracks. They already were, I said. Now they just know where to look. She turned slightly, studying me. Humans are remarkably comfortable with instability. We don't call it that, I said. We call it reality. A pause followed, not awkward, not tense. Honest. My advisors argue about you constantly, she said. Some believe you are a temporary anomaly. Others fear you are the beginning of a contagion. I smiled faintly. I've been called worse. She regarded me with something like curiosity. You do not seek permanence here. No, I said. That's not my role. And yet, she said, my daughter has grown bolder since you arrived. As if summoned by the words, the princess appeared at the far end of the terrace, no guards close enough to be obvious. She walked toward us with unhurried confidence, her steps light but purposeful. The council is still arguing, she said cheerfully. I told them they should argue less and act more. The queen arched an eyebrow. You said that? Yes, the princess replied. They did not enjoy it. I chuckled softly. The princess stopped beside me and looked out over the city. They are afraid the galaxy will expect us to protect more worlds now. They will, I said. She tilted her head. Does that frighten you? No, I answered honestly. It means fewer people will be alone when things fall apart. She nodded, satisfied. The queen's gaze rested on her daughter for a long moment before returning to me. You taught her that power is not diminished by compassion. I didn't teach her, I said. She already knew. I just didn't contradict it. That earned a quiet exhale from a queen, something between relief and resignation. You will be leaving soon, she said. Yes. The princess turned sharply. You will. I will, I said gently. I was never meant to stay. She frowned, thinking. But you will come back. I don't know, I admitted. But others, like me, will. She studied my face carefully, then nodded. That is acceptable. The queen reached into her ceremonial mantle and removed a small object, a simple insignia, unadorned, grown rather than forged. This does not grant rank, she said, holding it out. It grants recognition. I hesitated only a moment before accepting it. What does it signify? I asked. That you are acknowledged, she said. By us. And by history. The princess smiled brightly. It means you are family adjacent. I laughed softly. That might be the most dangerous title yet. Later, as I walked through the headquarters one final time, I felt eyes on me, not with suspicion, but with assessment. Officers, aides, even junior staff paused as I passed. Not bowing, not saluting, remembering. The transport waited at the upper platform, engines humming quietly. As I stepped aboard, the princess ran forward one last time and hugged me again, quickly, fiercely, without ceremony. This time, no one moved. No gasps. No alarms. The headquarters did not freeze. They watched. The queen inclined her head once, a gesture not of submission, but respect. As the transport lifted away, the city fell back into orderly motion beneath us. Empires resumed their rhythms. Councils reconvened. Doctrine was rewritten slowly, reluctantly. But the galaxy would never forget this moment, because it had learned something fundamental about humans. Not that we were stronger, not that we were smarter, but that when given influence without authority, we chose responsibility over dominance. That when a child trusted us, we did not weaponize it. And that once humanity stepped forward to protect without claiming ownership, it did not step back when the cost became real. Far across interstellar space, other courts would remember the story, not of treaties or fleets, but of a queen's daughter who ran across a sacred chamber and hugged a human. And how the entire headquarters froze. Not because of fear, but because in that moment everyone understood that the rules had already changed, and that humanity had entered the galaxy not as conquerors, but as something far more disruptive.